All right, we are live on a beautiful Thursday afternoon for this live class, which is the fifth class in our series on sexual alchemy. Welcome, everyone. For those who are joining us for the first time, my name is Dimelo Mareri and I am a Botswana-based spiritual healer, woo medicine woman, and an embodied leadership guide. As you're joining this space, please do say hi to me. Let me know from where in the world you're joining in, and some of what you might be hoping for from this conversation today. And if you have been following or taking part in our previous classes, it would also be amazing to hear what some of your takeaways have been from the previous classes. Yeah. And before we dive into it, let me just do a sound check for those who are here in the space. Please let me know if you can hear me okay, and also if you can see me good. Just a thumbs up would be enough, and I would greatly appreciate it before we step into this conversation today. So today we are going to be exploring why sexual healing is for everyone. And this conversation, as mentioned, it's the fifth in our series on sexual alchemy. And this class comes after a very deep exploration of what the sexual wound is and how you can heal the sexual wound, how you can alchemize it, right? And so we did that by looking at the three ways in which the sexual wound can manifest, right? The ways in which it might, manifest in your life and in your body. And we also deeply unpacked how you can go about healing this, or the healing pathways that you can lean into to heal this wound. Yeah. And so we are now just gently coming towards the conclusion of the series. We are on class 5 now. And as far as I know, we're left with one final class, excluding today. And today we're just going to be having a very chilled conversation around why sexual healing is for everyone, right? I know that oftentimes, so two things. Oftentimes when we hear the phrase sexual healing, we think of one, the physical act, right? And we also think of sexual trauma, okay? And so while those are definitely part of the conversation and the need and the invitation to lean into the sexual healing work, they're not the only reasons why we do this work, right? They're definitely a part of it, a very important part of it. However, they're not the only reason why, right? And so along the theme of us often thinking that is only about the sexual trauma, and maybe for people who have encountered very explicit and direct sexual trauma, right? We often miss the opportunities that lay within this work for all of us to step into this work, heal, grow, evolve, transform our lives, transform our bodies, and even transform our relationships, right? Because this matter also speaks to how we navigate our relationships, who we are in our relationships, and how we express ourselves and this energy in our intimate relationships. Yes, so today we're going to be exploring just 4 layers of why sexual healing is for everyone, right? And so, but let's take a brief pause before we dive into it, okay? Just to take in that little bit that served as our introduction. I absolutely love these conversations. Yes. So the first layer around why sexual healing is for everyone is the fact that we are all really needing a grounded and embodied education around our sexuality and our bodies, because in the most, like, we haven't really received any education, any solid, any grounded, any comprehensive education on sex, sexuality, and our bodies, right? So we explored some of this in the previous 3 classes, right, where we looked at the huge gap in our society, in our homes, in the schooling space, even in our religious spaces, right, relating to solid, comprehensive, grounded, embodied education around sexuality and our bodies, right? And so we're finding that this is missing, right? So usually when I think about some of the important things that I really, really wish we had an education around, like a solid education around, specifically because they form such a core part of who we are as human beings, right? What emerges is intimacy, it's sex, is money, right? Like, you'd wish at some point in our socialization we would have gotten like a solid and a comprehensive education on how to navigate these very, I want to say, pivotal matters of our human experience and our human existence, right? And so in the most part, a lot of us just do trial and error. I mean, trial and error is great, but a minimal solid education feels necessary, right? And so we're saying that a healing is needed for this gap in our socialization, because it is a process of unlearning and learning, right? What is our organic expression and what is the organic manifestation of our sexual energy, right? It is a process of dissolving that doesn't serve our highest expression, our highest incarnation, and then creating that which truly does serve us, right? And so we have actually looked at some of what the unlearning would look like, all right? We explored the limited and the limiting conditioning that we receive in our respective journeys here on earth, right? We've also deeply explored some of the distorted programming around sexuality and our bodies, right? That definitely call for for a process of unlearning and of learning what is truly organic to us and that which flows as original intelligence through our bodies, right? And so this learning is actually primarily from your body. Like, when we are learning, we are reconnecting with the wisdom and the inner knowing and the inner intelligence of your body, right? For it to show you the way, right? In terms of how to make manifest and how to express your sexual energy in ways that are like unique to you and that are also organic for you as a creation being, right? Yeah. So that's really the first one. It's like the why of the sexual healing work. It's because there's a huge gap in our society and in our socialization around just a solid and comprehensive education around this matter, around this aspect of our being, right? And The second bit of this, right? So we also need to consider what the sexual healing is for, right? And as we have explored, the sexual healing is for the sexual wound, right? Which manifests and has its roots in the three ways that we have explored, right? So there are three within the context of the series. There might be more, right? And these three roots and these three sources of the sexual wound, they actually don't discriminate across any lines of our human existence, right? They don't discriminate across genders or across gender lines. They don't discriminate across like social status. They don't discriminate across race. So anyone is susceptible to the sexual wound at varying degrees, right? Given your experience, how you're raised, how you're socialized, your own individual experiences, right? And so we're saying that anyone is susceptible to the sexual wound because, as we have explored, right, given how our world is currently set up, we've all received, to varying degrees, a limited and a deeply limiting conditioning around our sexuality and our bodies, right? And so this is not just exclusive to women. Like, this has happened to girls, this has happened to boys, this has happened to non-binary individuals, right? And so, like, just when you look at the broader landscape, the wiring, how our world is set up right now, we've all received like this conditioning that in its own way, at varying degrees, has disconnected us with our bodies, has disconnected us with our own innate knowing of how to make, manifest, and express our sexual energy, right? Has disconnected us from our own original intelligence that sits within our bodies or that flows through our bodies, right? And this is actually not a new problem because it predates our parents and their parents, right? And so this is not even like a blame conversation, right? Because we haven't received a comprehensive education on sexuality and our bodies from our parents because they too did not receive it from their parents. It's almost that it's really a case of them not having the capacity to facilitate that education because they have not received that education themselves, right? And so as adults who have access to the various resources that we have access to, we're presented with this education, right? Rather, we're presented with this opportunity to equip ourselves, especially in the ways that we have not been supported or our needs have not been met. All right? Yeah. And yeah, again, if there were like three things I could say all human beings need to be educated in: intimacy, money, sexuality. And I mean a real education that reconnects you with your divinity, right? A real education that brings you to your own inner knowing, to your own inner wisdom, right? Yeah. And we're also saying that anyone is susceptible to the sexual wound, given how our world is how our world is currently set up. We have all, to varying degrees, been impacted by the distorted programming around sexuality and our bodies, right? So, like, these are two sources of the sexual wound that we have explored, right? Yeah. So we're saying that this sexual healing work is needed for everyone. Everyone is invited into it because we've all been impacted by, or rather, we've all received limiting conditioning, and we've all been impacted by the distorted programming around sexuality and our bodies, right? And so we're wanting to heal the impact on our bodies of this conditioning and the programming, right? We're wanting to dissolve the resulting amnesia on our bodies. It's like we've forgotten our inner knowing, our original intelligence that sits within our bodies and that should ideally flow through our bodies, right? We're wanting to awaken that original intelligence of our bodies around who we are as sexual beings and how to express and how to make manifest this energy, right? And so this is what we have termed like body healing work, right? It's body healing work specifically within the body of work of sexual healing, right? And it's vast because when we go into the body, there'll be multiple layers of this work that we might need to do, right? And secondly, we're wanting to heal the subtle impact. Sometimes it's very subtle. This impact of the conditioning and of the programming on our wombs and our creation centers, right? And so again, like, this is not only a work for women, because it's not only women who have creation centers, right? If you are a human being and you're able to create life, actually it's if you're a human being because you've been created as a creator being, then you have a creation center, right? Which is affected by all of this conditioning and all of this programming, right? And so we want to hold healing space for that creation center, right? And for most women, this creation center is the physical womb space, right? And so this is the part of the work that we name womb healing, right? And can men do womb healing work? Men can do sexual healing work, right? And it will also speak to what might be manifesting and what might be unfolding around their creation centers, right? We can definitely do like sacral chakra healing work, right? Like, it would be interesting to call it womb healing work for men as well. But it's yes, although we probably wouldn't call it that, right? And we're also wanting to heal the shame-based ways of interacting with our bodies that we've been conditioned into and that have been programmed into our psyches, right? And yeah, we've had quite extensive conversation around the shame that we might be holding in our bodies as a result of the various experiences that we have had, and also as a result of how we are conditioned into relationship with our bodies, right? Or how we are conditioned on matters of our bodies, right? So collectively, just this healing of this shame, because it might not only sit in our womb space, right? It's collectively a body and a womb healing work, yeah? And this body healing and womb healing work is a full spectrum healing that encompasses emotional healing, all right? For the emotions that for the unprocessed emotions that you might still be holding within your body, right? It is also a psychological healing work for the wounded or the limiting beliefs, stories, vows that you might have formed, right, as you encountered this conditioning and this programming, right? There's also the opportunity to do somatic work to get into the body and process the impact of this conditioning and of this programming in your body. It's also a spiritual healing work and energetic healing work. We've spoken about this quite extensively in the previous 3 classes, right? So you can definitely check them out if you haven't yet. There's also the opportunity to do inner child and inner teen healing work. It's also an ancestral healing work. It's a divine feminine and also a divine masculine healing work. We explored this especially when we were talking about healing pathways for sexual trauma, right? Excuse me. And considering the opportunity to heal, like the relationship with the feminine and the relationship with the masculine, given who might have been the perpetrator of that painful experience in your life, right? So that's work that we can also do within the body healing and the womb healing, full spectrum work, right? And what can also be held within that work is the work of healing the God wound or of healing religious trauma, right? Because it's so interesting. Like, I usually consider like the matter of sex, sexuality, and our bodies to be such a highly contested space, even money, right? Because it's also very easy for God to be brought into the conversation, and it's also very easy for how we navigate these matters to also affect how we relate with God or just our relationship with God, right? There can be massive emotions of fear, of guilt, of shame around, oh my God, what does God think of me having done this, right? And this is primarily because of what might have been taught or might have been transmitted within the religious spiritual space, right? And so we're wanting to allow ourselves also, remember we spoke about a comprehensive and a grounded education around sexuality and our bodies, which also it cannot be done without having a conversation about God, without having a conversation on the spirituality of sex, the spirituality of our sexuality, the spirituality of our bodies, right? And just arriving at a more grounded, at a more holistic understanding of the wisdom, of divine wisdom around these matters, right? That can be quite liberating, yeah? Yeah. So that's also an opportunity. And we might realize that this is for everyone because, like, who hasn't passed through this module of life on God? Who hasn't passed through this module of life on religion, on spirituality, right? And how that might speak to your relationship with your body, your relationship with sexuality as a whole, right? And so I just want to share that I have in the pipeline a group healing program that is developing, right? And that I'm going to be sharing with you as soon as its creation is complete, right? And it is the Womb Medicine Circle for women who are wanting to heal their wombs, for women who are wanting to just learn about their wombs, for women who want to learn how to take care of their wombs, to connect deeply with their bodies, to come into embodied knowing and embodied wisdom of your body and your womb, right? And these are some of the topics we're going to be exploring and doing healing work around. Yeah, it's a 3 months program, and I'm really, really excited to share it with you when it is ready. Okay. And there's another exciting thing that happened this past week, but let's complete this first and then I'll tell you about that, right? Yeah. So we said that we're going to explore 4 layers of why sexual healing work is needed for everyone, right? The first one we've already explored is because most of us didn't really receive a solid, comprehensive education on sexuality in our bodies, right? Second, it is the fact that anyone is susceptible to the sexual trauma, right? Which is actually what we're wanting to heal, right? And to clarify that, we want to look at those sources of how just the sexual trauma manifests and how it might manifest in your life, how it might manifest in your body and in your relationship with your body, just for us to see, you know, this thing that we're talking about, right? And third, sexual healing is needed for everyone because it is not only for sexual trauma, right? Although there is a greater invitation to heal in the case where you might have encountered such an experience, right? So as I mentioned at the beginning, I know that we might associate sexual healing work only with sexual trauma, right? Yes, and while there is a greater invitation to heal when there has been that experience or that encounter in your life, right? There's also an invitation to heal for these other subtle forms of sexual trauma. I also consider them sexual trauma, right? Although they're very subtle. Yeah. Yeah. So what I was thinking was that we might also we also tend to associate sexual healing with the physical act, right? And that's also an opportunity, or that also holds an opportunity for us to actually heal, such that if you might be struggling in this area, right, of the experience of the physical act, there's definitely an opportunity to heal, right? Because it's actually often not about the physical act itself, but about so much more that lays beneath the experience that you're having, right? And finally, the 4th layer, we're all called to this work because this work on sexual healing is actually a work of returning to your original source intelligence around matters of creation, right? And so when we consider what sexual energy is creation energy, okay? And so when we're healing around this, right, it's really a process of reclaiming our organic intelligence and also our organic technologies around creation. And this is not just creation of babies, but of our lives and even of the world itself, right? And so when we heal in this way, we even directly inform what we create outwardly in the world and how we create it, right? as we clear the distortions around our sexual energy, around our sexuality, around our bodies, we inevitably plug ourselves into the source of original intelligence of how to create, of what to create, right? And so when we're considering matters of birthing the new earth in the world, right? Part of how we're going to birth that new earth is by us healing and transmuting the distortions that might sit within our very creation centers, right? Such that we may come back into solid and consistent partnership with divine source intelligence and be able to create from that level, right? And so when we're wanting to create advanced and elevated companies, organizations that are founded on very elevated new earth values, we also need to elevate the source from which we birth our ideas that become projects, that become organizations, right? And so, like, just with this understanding of your sexual energy being creation energy that actually also informs what you create and how you create it, we begin to arrive at this understanding that when we heal matters of our sexuality, when we liberate our sexual energy, liberating it, I mean bringing it back to its organic frequency, we also liberate our creation energy and enable ourselves the capacity to create, I dare say, things of God. All right? And until then, it can be a little difficult, right? And we're going to explore this in the next class, where we're going to be talking about the significance of the spirit of the sexual healing work for leaders, right? We also want to consider why we keep like moving in circles in our world, and especially where we're wanting to effect change, right? Why do we keep creating? Creation comes here from the very source where flows your sexual energy. Why do we keep creating the same things, and especially the things that we say we don't want, right? And so we want to go back to source, right? And this is part of the healing work that we're invited into, right? And it is a work that we're all invited into because we all play such a key role in the creation process of our world. We're all co-creators, right? In birthing this new earth, in birthing our world, right? And so when you do your part, right, you contribute to the bigger whole, right? Again, as we clear the distortions, as we clear the limiting and the limited conditioning around this, we reconnect with and begin to access the original source codes of creation, right? Yeah. And I want to add that, like, I want to call them byproducts of this work. It's like when we step into this work, there will be almost like at the top why we're doing it, right? And I want to add that, like, the byproducts of this work are also so juicy because, of course, it's going to impact how you relate with your body. Of course, it's going to positively impact how you show up for the physical act itself. Like, it's all levels of juiciness, right? And it's all levels of juiciness that also facilitate our growth, right? Like, we're wanting to engage in the physical act in ways that actually elevate us, in ways that enable us to evolve and not to regress, to go back. All right. Like, as spiritual beings having a human experience, we're wanting to step into ways of being and of doing life that enable us that evolution, that ascension, that growth, like, right? And so when we do this work, we enable ourselves that opportunity, right? To be evolving even when we are engaging in very juicy experiences of the physical act itself, right? Yeah. So the benefits are endless, yeah? And like, that really feels complete in terms of what I wanted to share today, given that this is like the fifth class in our series, you know. I just want to say what an honor it's been to share this work with you all. And I also love that we have this body of work sitting somewhere that we can come back to at any given time, as and when it is needed, right? I've especially loved like that deep exploration of what the sexual wound is and how we can heal it, right? And yeah, as far as I know, next week we're going to be exploring the link between sexual healing work and leadership, and just what that means for leadership in our world and also in our continent as a whole, right? It's been such a joy, such an honor to share this with you today. And until next time, until our next class, yeah, take super beautiful care of yourself. Bye.